for a Bible study because a lot of the problems we have in South Carolina is we don't have a shortage of people calling themselves Christians. We don't have a shortage of people that are trying to follow Christ. But what they do get neutralized on is whether or not they should participate in civic government. I think the overwhelming percentage of Christians in South Carolina think they're not supposed to go into the political realm. I'll go in, yeah. But I see that's part of it, but I don't think that's the big thing here. So, nowhere in the Old Testament or New Testament are property rights ever disparaged. If you think I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but that's what I found. I don't think there's any place in the New Testament or Old Testament where property rights are disparaged. The commandment, "You shall not steal," underscores the right of property. I'm sorry, there was a mistake made when I was copying and pasting here. Jesus often referred to property and material goods, but he never condemned anyone for possessing them. He only condemned people's over-attachment to possessions. See, I tricked you there so you'd help you understand this better, okay? But he condemned people for their over-attachment to possessions. We all suffer from that, right? We all have our over-attachment to something, right? If you don't suffer from that, that's the power of the Lord right there. If you don't suffer from that, I have over-attachments to my phone, to my vehicle, to, there's certain things that maybe it's your nice house that you have an over-attachment to. And I think we're really, what proves a Christian is a Christian, I mean, it doesn't prove, but when you're showing that you've overcome this is when you put everything on the line for the truth. You're willing to risk everything, which the founding fathers of this country did for us, right? The parable of the first and last is, I think, is an important one to understand. It's in Matthew 21 through 16. I'm not going to go through it, but it talks about, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. So a lot of people understand this parable as the parable about the vineyard, right? But Jesus says here in verse 15, if you can see that, it is not lawful for me to do what I wish. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own thing? So right here, Jesus is basically telling us, he's telling us we have property rights. And this was understood in this parable. So we have a right to property. So there you go. Acts 5 through 14. There's a few verses here. It's about Ananias and Sapphira. And anyways, Jesus asked them, actually this is Paul in Acts. He says, "While it remained, was it not your own? And after it was sold, was it not your own, under your own control?" He's talking about their land that they sold. But he's referring to their property ownership. He's not disparaging them for the land that they owned and that they sold. But and they eventually get in trouble. They actually die, but that's because it was their sin of not telling the truth on what they did with the money, right? But here again, Paul is citing the fact that they have a right to their property, okay? The founders of our country knew that where there were no property rights, there are no human rights. This has been revealed over and over again. It just takes common sense. Study governments over history. And Virginia patriot Arthur Lee said, Arthur, that's a great name, right? There you go. If your name was Lee, well, your last name is Hampton, so you still got a good last name, right? But if it's Lee, But the right of property is the guardian of every other right. And to deprive a people of this is in fact to deprive them of their liberty. This was understood. Why isn't this understood today? How many of you are taxed to pay for public schools? All of us, right? So it was understood back then that you have a right to your property. There was not a tax for your public school, right? In the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, property rights are cited in writings and discoveries. In the Third Amendment, grants or denying house on their property to soldiers. There was a problem with soldiers from Britain just wanting to live in houses, and some of them were not good people, and so the Americans didn't want them staying with them at times. And so, but they didn't have the right to tell the soldiers no. And so, but what this does, what the Third Amendment did is, nobody can come to your house and say, that's a soldier, and say, I have a right to live there, and you can tell them no as a property owner. Fourth Amendment protects property rights from unlawful searches and seizures. This is especially important, right? We have our goods in our house. We don't want people looking at. You don't want people going through your lockbox at home. Maybe you have multiple lockboxes. Maybe you have something else. You just don't want anybody from off the streets coming and taking a look and see what you have, right? Matthew 5:17 through 20 says, "Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from law till all law is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of these least commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you, that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." What is he saying here? Your righteousness has to be beyond what the Ten Commandments is, basically, right? So our job is to go through and correct people, teach righteousness, be righteous. It's very difficult. We're supposed to be perfect like Christ, but we know it's in this, Now I know I may not be speaking to everybody, because I don't know where everybody is with their faith. This was created for a Bible study, Christian Bible study. So if you have any qualms with this, just understand this is what the founders were going through in their heads when they were trying to figure out what are we going to do with this new country that we fought for. And so this is an understanding they had. They were trying to teach righteousness. The Ten Commandments versus the Communist Manifesto. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. We probably everybody here knows that commandment, right? But in a communist country, you have mandatory atheism. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. In a communist government, you worship state and military power, basically. In the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. In a communist country, you cannot mention God in public. That's kind of scary, isn't it? Could happen. The Ten Commandments require that you honor the Sabbath day. And in communism, there is no day off to honor God. The Ten Commandments require that you honor thy father and mother. In communism, the role of the parents is eliminated, and your children are raised by the state. We saw that in Nazi Germany, right? We saw that in the Soviet Union. Thou shalt not kill. Very obvious, well known, right? You should not kill somebody else. But in a communist state, there's euthanasia, there's genocide, there's mass murder, there's rule by fear. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, adultery is okay in communism because the marriage and family structure is eliminated, right? Thou shalt not steal. We already talked about the one. In communism, they eliminate the ownership of property. I would not own this projector, this computer, or my car outside. Everything is owned by the government. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Well, the state runs a propaganda machine and truth becomes illegal. In a communist, we're kind of seeing that today, aren't we? Are we seeing that? That's where we're heading if we don't correct people, if we don't teach people the truth. Thou shalt not covet. This is a really hard thing to do, to not covet somebody's property, right? But Christians are supposed to not covet, right? Well, the state covets and takes control in a communist government. Right now, my wife was in a car wreck a few weeks ago. She's doing fine, but we got a new car. Well, guess what? The state's already coming in saying, well, we need more taxes from you this time around because this is a better car than the last car you had. And so you're taxed more based upon the value of your vehicle. We know we pledge allegiance. We just did it, right? We pledge to a republic, and it's one nation under what? That's what we pledge to. But why is it a republic? It's a republic because we have a Constitution, right? That's what makes a republic, is the Constitution. In a Marquette Law School Supreme Court survey, they did a survey back in 2019. They found out about 90% of the people were registered to vote. And out of these registered voters, about half of them, not even half, said they read the Constitution. I imagine much less actually understood the Constitution. So who are we sending to the voting polls to vote? So you know when they have Get the Vote Out campaigns, that's actually for the Marxist left. That's for the communists because you're sending uneducated people to go vote. On our side, we need people who are educated to go vote. We don't want to just, I don't tell all my friends go to the polls and vote. I tell them, are you educated on what's going on? Do you know which one's going to obey the Constitution? Because if you don't, I don't want you voting my vote out, right? So it's the key is, that's why you'll see on TV really soon, get out the vote campaigns, get out the vote campaigns. No, we should only want people that are educated to go voting. And so that's really a key, because if you're not educated in the Constitution, just like having it in the garbage, right? I mean, you're voting as an American, but you're not really tending to the constitutional republic like you need to be tending to it. So how long does it take to read the U.S. Constitution? Anybody want to guess on this? 10 minutes? You'd have to be a super fast reader. Maybe you could, though. I challenge you to read it in 10 minutes. 25 minutes is approximately 26 minutes. You can go to the John Birch Society website. You can actually listen to it in 26 minutes. We have a play button on one of our web pages that you can listen. So somebody can do it over their lunch break. So we don't really have excuses, right, to not ever have reading the U.S. Constitution. Yes. Much longer. We're going to get there. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about that, though. It is not good enough just to be somebody who read the Constitution once. But what I'm trying to do is get people started. And that's what I've done in Spartanburg County and other counties. We're just trying to light the flame. If the flame gets going, it's going to burn like wildfire, and we're going to have constitutionalists everywhere. That's the goal here. So step one, what is your why? Maybe it's for the soldiers and their families. That may be your why. Maybe it's for the veterans that came back from war, saw how bad it was, and you want to protect your area, you know? Maybe it's for the disabled veteran who came back wounded. Since World War II, we've not been in a constitutional war. So basically, all of us who've seen wars our entire lives have seen wars that probably shouldn't have taken place, unless you were alive during World War II. But every war since then was unconstitutional. So I'm not saying a conflict wasn't necessary, you know, but it was never voted in constitutionally, and there should have been a constitutional vote for war. That's how a constitutional republic is supposed to operate. Some of you go to church. You probably want to protect your place of worship, right? That may be your why. Maybe it's the fact that every taxpayer owes over $250,000 right now to the federal government. Maybe you don't like that. Some of you may not like debt. I don't like debt. We each owe over $250,000. Every taxpayer in America right now owes over $250,000. That's not a good thing, right? Maybe it's your Bible study you want to protect. Maybe you see what you personally get out of your Bible study, and you don't want that to go away. So you want to protect the constitutional republic for that purpose. Maybe it's your family. Maybe you have children. Maybe you're worried about future generations. What could happen to them? This is my why. My dad had a cancer diagnosis 12 years ago. I researched cancer cures and things you could use to treat cancer. And I wanted to fly him to Mexico. Now, he didn't have enough time to go to Mexico, but I realized that the best cancer treatments that I wanted for my dad were not here in the United States, because we lack freedom in the United States. We do. When it comes to the medical industry, we lack freedom on what to use to treat people. This video, World Without Cancer, is actually produced by John Birch Society members. This was the video that really woke me up. So if you've ever read the book Creature of Jekyll Island or heard of it, same guy. I think you got a few, Arthur, outside there. He's got one copy left. So G. Edward Griffin actually produced this video with other members of the John Birch Society. And I was upset because my mom had already passed away before my dad. And she passed away when I was 13. That's her on the left when I was a child. And this is her after 2 rounds of chemotherapy and radiation that probably should never even been used on her. But she was listening to the doctors who thought they knew what was best. And she died right away after experiencing the devastating effect of the chemical treatments. Chemotherapy is derived from mustard gas from World War II. That's where they got it, you know. Nutrition is much better than radiation and chemotherapy. But I'm not a doctor, so you don't have to take my word for it. But after what I've learned is, why did I first learn about this from a John Birch Society book and a John Birch Society video? Why hadn't somebody told me this? I grew up in hospitals. When you're at the hospital all the time when you're a child, you have to go visit all the other patients too, because they want to see the children that are because you're brightening their day, right? So I got to see all these other people who were sick, and they were being treated with big pharma medicine. And so what I can tell you is there are better methods out there, and Americans should have the freedom to use those methods. So I became a Ron Paul supporter. Why did I become a Ron Paul supporter? Well, Ron Paul wanted people to obey the U.S. Constitution. He called himself the champion of the Constitution. And so here I am, and I'm holding it up right there, and I'm representing the Republican Liberty Caucus at the time, and I'm telling everybody, read the Constitution. All we need to do is obey this. It's that easy, right? It's supposed to be that easy. You have to find other people that want to obey it, though. That's the hard part. So as a John Birch Society employee, I became a volunteer for the John Birch Society. I joined. Arthur Hampton has applications out there if you do want to join after this is over. But I joined, and I started teaching the Constitution all over the place. This is Representative Rob Harris's home. We're teaching it there. This is at Burnsview Baptist Church in Spartanburg County. This is the Greenville Republican Party. That one's in Georgia at the Public Library in Valdosta, Georgia. So you got to know your why. I found out what my why is. I hope you know your why. If not, I'd be glad to help you. Maybe Arthur would be glad to help you. But once you know your why, you need to study the basics of Americanism. Freedom cannot exist without morality. Unless we have sufficient character and moral fortitude, we will not be able to govern ourselves. When morality declines, the abuse of rights increases and more government is necessary. Just as criminals need jailers and domesticated animals need herdsmen, and immoral citizenry needs a police state. We're heading that direction, right? We don't want to. We're going to stop it. But we're going to stop it county first, state second, federal government third. Number two, ignorant and free can never be. In order to be capable of self-government, we must not only be moral but informed. If we are not informed, we will tend to vote for the politician who promises the most. This is what's happening, right? We will vote for more and bigger government until one day we have total government. An uninformed electorate, whether moral or immoral, will vote itself into slavery. Only a moral, well-informed electorate will vote for people of principle, those who will limit the government to its proper role. Number three, the third basic teaching. Our rights come from God. I heard somebody earlier in the prayer kind of talk about our rights coming from God, our right to, assemble, our right to free speech. So when God created man, he gave him certain inalienable rights, because rights existed prior to men joining together to form governments. The purpose of government is only to protect these rights. The purpose cannot be to grant us rights that we already have, nor can it be to legislate out of existence rights that are inalienable. Our form of government is based on this fundamental truth. If we ever abandon it, we will lose our form of government. Third, so we only have one more. This one's the hard part, though, for most people. The essence of freedom is the limitation of government. The essence of freedom is the limitation of government. Because men and women are sinful by nature, some government is necessary to secure our God-given rights. Because government officials are men and women, the powers of government must be strictly limited and constantly held in check. The U.S. Constitution limits the powers of the federal government if the citizens are active in enforcing it. This is the political spectrum that the John Birch Society uses. We are not right-wing extremists. The anarchists are. We are not left-wing extremists either. John Birch Society members are Americanists. We're moderate constitutionalists. Moderate meaning we're in the middle here. We obey the Constitution. But we're Americanists because we believe in inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property. So we're not for no government. We're for limited government. But we're not over here where people say we have a democracy. We don't have a democracy. Democracy is majority rule. Majority rule doesn't work for us. It's unless you're part of the deep state. I'm guessing nobody here is part of the deep state, right? So total government, we've seen that. That's the worst of communism, Nazism, fascism. The list goes on and on. So if somebody asks you, if you become a courageous constitutionalist, tell them, I'm an Americanist, I'm a constitutional moderate. I'm not a right-wing extremist. The anarchists are the right-wing extremists because they're actually for no government. We are not for no government. We want correct government. So once you understand the basics of Americanism, so you know your why, step one. You know the basics of Americanism, step two. And by the way, we have a great brochure that teaches the basics of Americanism that you can grab from Arthur on your way out if you want to use that. Step three, we recommend studying the U.S. Constitution correctly. Correctly is the word there. that you need to understand, because there's many other ways to study the Constitution. So you got to look at it from a doctor's standpoint, in my opinion. You got to really examine the Constitution. Some people, when they get sick, they go straight for these. And then you have some people that will research herbs and natural cures and stuff like that, and they want to think more about it. But some do just listen to their doctor and take that. These are different perspectives, right? Yeah? Somebody who's a runner may go, my knees hurt, I need painkillers. And that may seem to fix the problem for a temporary time period, unless he has ligament issues and his ligaments are getting worse and worse and worse. Some of you may have experienced this already in your lifetime. But there's a company in Lancaster, South Carolina called Nutramax who created a supplement that's natural and has no side effects. It's called Cosamin. So it helps to relieve the problems with your ligaments. It helps to keep them together so you don't have to have as many knee issues in the future. And it's been proven to work, or else all these people with horses wouldn't be using it, because we all know people take better care of their animals than they do their kids and themselves. And their number one customer are pets. So that just goes to show you, as humans, we don't take care of ourselves as much as we take care of our pets. But anyways, going back here, this is two different perspectives, right? This person doesn't even think about using the Cosamin. He just goes straight for the painkiller. Whereas this lady here, she uses the Cosamin, no side effects, natural, it's working for her, right? Well, same with the Constitution. Is this the Constitution? Does this look like the Constitution? Look at the Constitution you have. This cannot be the Constitution, right? This says Constitution of the United States of America. Fraudulent, right? This is a fraud. This is from the Library of Congress. This is their Constitution that they say is the Constitution. It's over 3,000 pages. They don't even put it on PDF anymore because it's so long. How long, you said you could read the Constitution in 15 minutes. How long do you think it'd take to read this one? Oh, come on, man. I want to hear from you. I wouldn't even try to read it. It's so long. But anyways, maybe you would. I'll challenge you to read it someday, okay? But to me, a republic cannot operate with a 3,000-page book. How many citizens would actually understand that? That makes no sense, right? But I can tell you, most people in Congress, in fact, nearly all, are committed to this Constitution. Most Supreme Court justices are committed to this Constitution. Even in the state legislature, I would say most legislators, and correct me if I'm wrong, are committed to this Constitution. They may not know it, but that's the one they've committed to with some of their ideas, right? Why did this happen? I like this one. I like my pocket Constitution. I can read it in 25 minutes, Marbury versus Madison happened in 1803. And he wrote, Chief Justice John Marshall wrote this quote in there, and it's been misused. He wrote, "It is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is." Now, if you're a good guy, how would you look at this? The good American would go, "It is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is according to the U.S. Constitution." And that is actually what Chief Justice John Marshall meant. The way we've taken it today, as so many things have been misinterpreted since that time, lawyers today, for the most part, most lawyers, I know you all like lawyers a whole lot. There's probably a good one in Cherokee. I hope I'm not insulting anybody, right? Am I insulting a lawyer? No. We do have good attorneys, but all attorneys right now are really taught with the annotated Constitution. This 3,000-page one. They are not taught with the pocket Constitution that you have. And so they actually believe the 3,000-page Constitution is the actual Constitution, and they'll argue against you tooth and nail to argue against that pocket Constitution. But the decision of the case was misused to make Americans think that the Supreme Court justices can create law from the bench. And you're all shaking your heads, no, they can't create law from the bench. Well, why did so many of us give in to Roe versus Wade for so long? Roe versus Wade was a Supreme Court ruling, right? Was it ever law? What did they tell us for decades? We needed to change the Supreme Court in order to get rid of Roe versus Wade and to where we could actually shut down the abortion industry in our state. That was a lie, because only Congress can create law. And they never did create law. We were lied to. Alexander Hamilton argued that the federal judiciary was the least dangerous branch, as it had no influence over either the sword, the power of the executive branch, or the purse, the power of the legislative branch. Instead, they could only issue a judgment in a case before them, that's what Roe versus Wade was. It was just the case before them. They weren't issuing law. They had no authority to make general laws, but only laws of the case before them. That's what Alexander Hamilton said. Founding father, right? Is he correct or wrong? He's correct, right? That's the quote you got to use against these people, is that quote right there. And in the New American Magazine that just came out on August 14th, we've got that quote in there. But I'd recommend, and I can send these slides to you if you want them after this is over. But this is a roadmap to the U.S. Constitution that we have available on our website. You just need to go to this web link up here, jbs.org/constitution/video, and you'd find it. But this here and this over here is powers given to Congress. This is power given to the executive branch. This small part, which takes up less than 1/9 of the page, that's the power to the judiciary branch. Did you know that Supreme Court justices are not in there for their lifetime? Did you know that? The Constitution says that if they are on bad behavior, which is not obeying the Constitution, Congress can remove them. That's what the Constitution says. So whoever has ever told you that they're lifetime appointments, they've either been just repeating what they've said and they didn't know any better, or they were lying to you. So here I am telling you the truth, as a Christian should. They're not lifetime appointments. All you got to do is get Congress to vote them out, to impeach them, basically. That's the cure. These are the 5 parts of the Constitution that are typically misinterpreted. The Supremacy Clause, found in Article 6, Clause 2. You don't need to open up your Constitution right now to look at it. The General Welfare Clause, they've changed the term of welfare. It used to be welfare like, making sure there's tranquility. Now welfare to them is different, And we've given into it. We've allowed them to change that definition, so we got to take that back. Because the Constitution is correct. The same with the Interstate Commerce Clause. The Interstate Commerce Clause is written correctly. It should be obeyed. But there's people who go, we need to change that so the states can trade better with each other. And it's like, no, it doesn't need to be changed. It needs to be obeyed, right? So there's all these can be learned in Class 2 of our Constitution as a Solution Workshop. So if you ever take a Constitutional Solution Workshop, which we do all the time, in Class 2 you will learn how to go about understanding these to where you know the true meaning of these 5 misinterpreted parts of the U.S. Constitution. If you know how to interpret them correctly and you correct your congressman and you correct people in your county on it, you will change the landscape of your county. It's so easy to do too. So this is a guy that teaches the Constitution. I'm sorry. 10 minutes left? Yes. Okay. I think I can finish it in 10 minutes. Okay, this is Rick Green. He teaches a biblical citizenship class. It's online. And so he believes in the annotated Constitution. So the 3,000-page Constitution, that's the one that he goes by. Now, he does say, oh, well, you got the pocket Constitution that you all have, it is still supreme, but, it's still up to the interpretation of the Supreme Court. So if you're learning from Rick Green's classes, you're actually learning the wrong perspective, unless you want to be on the side of misinterpreting the Constitution. He's actually with a group called the Convention of States Project. They believe in this annotated 3,000-page Constitution. And the reason I can tell you that, their solutions are actually trying to fix the annotated Constitution of 3,000 pages. The John Birchside solution is, let's just quit believing the annotated Constitution is the Constitution, and let's start obeying the correct one, which is the one that you have in front of you right now. What I'm saying is, you can take this if you want to, but just understand the perspective. I've got Birch members that have taken this course. They're very nice and pleasant, and they participate in the sessions afterwards where they discuss the Constitution. And what they do usually is correct people about what the Constitution really means at the end of those classes. So just keep this in consideration. These are happening all over America right now, where Christians, because it's called biblical citizenship, A lot of Christians are going into these classes thinking this is the key to understand the U.S. Constitution. It's not. He's teaching it incorrectly. Perspective matters. A lot of people promote the Hillsdale College lectures on Constitution. Hillsdale College is the same way. They don't exactly like that there's a 3,000-page Constitution that, most of Congress believes in, but they still go with it. They go, okay, well, it'd be nice to get back to the pocket Constitution, but, let's just still understand that most people want to obey the 3,000-page Constitution. So that's what we're going to teach you to learn how to, understand and stuff. So anyways, still worth going through if you want to, but it's sort of a distraction in a way. It's not as good as this one. In fact, this is by far the best Constitution workshop there is. You can watch it from home. It's all free online on the John Birch Society website. It takes about 9 hours to get through, and once you're through it, you'll never want to go back to the other perspective of believing there's a 3,000-page Constitution. I'm not saying you ever believed in that perspective. I didn't know for years that anybody had that perspective. And now, after being this so long, I kind of see now, after being in battles with state legislators and congressmen, I understand what they believe now. And the fact that the U.S., the Library of Congress, says on the book that it's the U.S. Constitution, there you go. That's what's going on in America, is that it's like changing the Ten Commandments. How would you like it if a church rewrote the Bible and wrote an annotated version of the Ten Commandments? You wouldn't like that very much. That's what's happened in America with the U.S. Constitution. We should fight for this. People died for our republic and fought for that small document there for our constitutional republic to abide by. So once you understand these things, step 1, what is your why? Step 2, basics of Americanism. Step 3 was studying the U.S. Constitution correctly. Step 4 is to facilitate a Constitutional Solution workshop. And I hope you do one here soon. Arthur Hampton would be glad to help you with that if you want to do it. He can help you with flyers. These are samples of flyers we've done for Constitution as a Solution workshops. This is Dr. Robert Jackson doing a workshop in Chesney. I know some of you probably know Dr. Robert Jackson. He's a hero in my opinion. I admire him. I think he's one of the most courageous men in the entire United States. I really do. This is a home in Pickens County, completely packed full. This is in Myrtle Beach on the left. This, of course, they're really rich, so they use private clubhouses at the nicest country clubs you can. Don't tell them I said that, but you actually don't have to be rich to go there. You just have to dress nicely to pass dress code. And in Columbia, this is actually a bar restaurant, so we're doing a Constitution workshop there. This is in Myrtle Beach. This is one we did way back when. So you're allowed to have fun and enjoy yourselves at these Constitution workshops. So anyways, we bring snacks, we order food, we have drinks together. So it's a good time. Aiken County, this is done at the home of Mike and Vicki Simon. So she went out of her way to get certificates for everybody. So now everybody has a certificate, and you can always call John Birch Society headquarters or work with Arthur, and he can get you certificates for your group if that's what you want to do at the end of your Constitution Institution workshop. And these people in North Carolina, they're in Boone, they actually made shirts that recognize the Constitution Institution workshop on the back, gave the phone number for it, and our motto for the John Birch Society, less government, more responsibility. It should say more individual responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. That's on the front of those shirts. So step 5, utilize the Freedom Index scorecards. Now, if anybody tells you, if you're a follower of Christ, if they tell you, you can't rebuke anybody in government because that's not our realm. We're not supposed to, you know people believe this, right? I'm not telling you something you don't know. This is what has happened to Christians. They've been neutralized because of incorrect teachings when it comes to Romans 13. But this is John the Baptist here in these 2 verses. But here the tetrarch being rebuked by him concerning Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, and for all the evils which Herod had done. It wasn't limited to the fact that Herod was having an affair with his brother's wife. He actually rebuked him for all the evils which Herod had done. And he also added this, above all, that he shut John up in prison. So John rebuked him so much that he ended up in prison, and he actually got his head chopped up afterwards, and he was martyred for the cause that all Christians are part of. And so, anyways, if if what John the Baptist did isn't a great example for what we need to be doing, I don't know what is, because the man who baptized Christ was actually rebuking one of the top government officials for all the evils that he did. These are scorecards that just came out. Now, this is our second time around of doing these scorecards. John Birch's Society headquarters does them in the states everywhere. There's a lot of mistakes that were made, and so your job is to correct these people. Now, we do have a state legislator with us right now, Arthur Hampton, and I've already talked to him, and so you've recognized there were some votes on here that were incorrect according to how we score. Now, we score according to the American principles in the U.S. Constitution, and what we would ask all the state legislators here is just start, abiding by the principles of America. No socialism. Get back to obeying the U.S. Constitution, American principles. And after talking to the legislator that's here, Brian, I know your heart's in the right place, man. And my hope is that you'll be at 100% next go around, so we can share this with others in this community, that we can actually, with an educated electorate, get 100% of obedience to the U.S. Constitution, American principles with this. If you don't think there can be 100%, there are 3 state representatives that got 100%. Jordan Pace, Ryan McCabe, and Rob Harris, they all got 100%. Ryan McCabe actually did the best because he showed up for every vote. There's 1 vote that Rob Harris missed and 1 vote that Jordan Pace missed. So it's not like we're grading people on something that can't be done. But anyways, we have those out there. I recommend you study them for yourself and take into understanding what the John Birch Society determined on those votes, and you can decide for yourself, what you do next. We have Freedom Index scores for all of Congress. Congress is not obeying the U.S. Constitution very well, right? That's why a lot of you are probably here. You're seeing what's going on at the federal government level. We've been grading these people for decades now. Our problem is finding people to share the indexes that we have. And so what we would love to have in this county are people sharing the indexes that have, the freedom indexes. Do you have any of the new freedom indexes? You gave them all out? Okay, so we need to order new ones. But we have them for Congress, and your congressman is actually Ralph Norman, who scored 100% this last go-around. So I would print his off and actually say, hey, congratulate him, hand it, because you're doing a great job. But the reason he's getting 100% on this last scorecard, this 85 is his overall lifetime score, but the reason he got 100% last time, I can tell you, is because we have members that are holding him accountable to the Freedom Index. Okay? And not enough people are holding these other representatives accountable. My representative is William Timmons, who you can't talk to him much about the U.S. Constitution. He's not going to adhere to it. He loves the United Nations. He wants to stay in the United Nations. We should get out of the United Nations. The John Birch Society has been against it since the 1950s when we started. And so you can't have people like that in Congress, but we need a better educated electorate in Spartanburg and Greenville County to get rid of somebody like William Timmons, who likes the United Nations. Step 6, after you've learned about the indexes, schedule meetings with your elected representatives. This is easy to do. A lot of representatives get bored because they don't get met with enough. Like, they wonder if their electorate even cares about what they're doing sometimes. And a lot of times the only people that want to visit them are people who want something out of it, like a grant, a government grant or something like that. So meet with them. You can easily find your legislators on the South Carolina Representatives website. You can find all your delegation on the South Carolina Legislator website. You only have 3, 1 senator and 2 representatives. So it's easy to know who those 3 people are. If you don't know who your state representative is, I can help you afterwards figure out who that is. Teach and organize in your community. We're told it's either Democrats or Republicans. Don't think that way. I know you're in the Republican Party, but at the top, they don't care. It's a uniparty. They don't care. And so don't fall into this trap. Be an Americanist. Be a constitutionalist. George Washington warned us about political parties. However, political parties may now and then answer popular ends. They are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, do we see any cunning and ambitious people in the government? Yeah. Cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. This was given in George Washington's farewell address. I invite you all to get your friends involved in the John Birch Society. No matter what state you're in, this is a good supplement for being part of the Republican Party. We have a page here. You just type in the zip code that your friend lives in. They find out right away who their field coordinator is. They can join. They can get the help that you all get if you work with Arthur Hampton, your field coordinator here. Joining the John Birch Society is $87 a year if you want the magazine and the bulletin that we write delivered to you in the mail. If you want it electronically, just by email, it's $48 a year, so you can get it that way. I invite you to go to my website here that I use to get people on my email list for South Carolina. I have a very large email list. I send emails every so often to. It's evanmulch.com, so there's videos you can watch there as well. And I encourage you just to keep, like I said earlier, I made this for a Christian Bible study. Even if anybody here is not a follower of Christ, verse 16 here, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. A lot of the founding fathers of America were unsure on what they actually believed. They believed in the concepts of Christianity, and so there's a lot of questions like what was in their heart, but they saw the wisdom in this. They saw the wisdom in what Christians were doing and what could be done if there was a Christian government created for the purpose of a constitutional republic that protected the God-given rights of individuals. And that's what happened in America. That's why we're here today. This has been a bastion of freedom for over 200 years now, and let's keep it that way. There are people at war with us, and they're intruding on our property rights. And we have to defend our property rights from these people who do that. And so I'd ask you to just get involved as much as you can. If you feel like you're delivering a little bit of time right now to this cause, deliver a lot of time to this cause, because like I have 2 children. I saw you've got children. Their future depends on it. There's no place to move to. You can't move from the United States and move to a bastion of freedom. This is really, they're playing for keeps, but we should play for keeps too. Okay? God bless you all. I thank you for listening to this. I thank you for the time. I think you gave me a few extra minutes, so I appreciate what you've done. And I thank you for getting the word out, because it is not easy to organize a group like this. And if anything, Heath is the one that wanted me to come here. I hope I lit a fire. If you, even if you don't agree with what I said, if you disagree, if you think differently, if anything, I hope it just motivates you to make more things happen, because we're getting a lot of activity in Spartanburg County. I can tell you these tools and concepts work. What I hope for you to do is just to use them yourself and see that they work here as well.